Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, the podcast show. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts. And today we are doing another episode of what I call Let's Talk, where we have a variety of kind of discussions on a topic. And today's topic is about body image and body positivity, primarily from a women's perspective, but we will kind of touch on it as a whole. And I have with me today Lee and Patty, who are generally with me each month. Sonja is out of town for today, but I have two other lovely guests I'm so excited to have with me. I have Devinne and Renata. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So I'm so excited. I want to start off. I think this is something that a lot of women, I think more than men, generally kind of go through and talk about. But this idea of body image, I was kind of doing some research prior, really refers to how an individual sees their own body and how attractive they feel themselves to be. And, you know, this can kind of stem from somebody's body weight, their hair color, their skin color. You know, there's a variety of different things that can kind of be body image. And one of the things I wanted to share first was kind of bring up on the screen here, just kind of some bodies that we've seen through time for women specifically, and kind of how that changed, and kind of just talk about your thoughts on all of this. And so I want to just share right here. So this was the one that they kind of had first. This is a website called The Science of People. And so they have kind of an ancient Egypt. I actually think this is kind of how women look today. I don't know if this is any different, but this one is just a little bit more slender, higher waist, symmetrical face. I feel like even the motion she's doing. I mean, for, 1292 BC, that's a very long time ago. It's interesting to note that there was still this idea of what a woman should look like way back when. I mean, do either of you, Lee, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you think that that's interesting that way back when that there was like kind of this ideal thought?
Yeah, I think that kind of surprises me because, if you look at like some of the older paintings and stuff, there were women that were like more voluptuous and that, so I'm kind of surprised by this image because this looks like kind of nowadays.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. And I just want to scroll down. So then it kind of gets into ancient Greece, which is a little bit what you're talking about. So again, we're talking about different parts of the world as well, where is a little bit more voluptuous and light skinned. Again, thinking about people from ancient Greece, again, 500 BC. Like that's crazy to me that even back then. Renata, any thoughts on this? Again, thinking about kind of early on the expectations.
Yeah, for me, it just reminds me of like if you've ever looked at ancient Greek art or like Greek history, it reminds me a lot of like some of the images from back then. And honestly, I still feel like back in the day, they were probably more voluptuous and more curvy and, really loved their bodies in that particular way. It's very, I mean, how would we know, right? In this day and age, how would we know what the woman's body really was like back in the day?
Yeah, that is true. We are kind of basing it on, we assume the books and the things of that nature are correct. Then we look at the Han Dynasty. So again, a different part of the world, 206 BC. Again, slim waist, kind of pale, small feet. Thought that was kind of interesting. Patty, any thoughts on this? Again, as you're kind of looking at this, thinking about how women were portrayed kind of earlier on.
No, yeah. Again, I find it very interesting, but even in respect to the models that they're using, that kind of wondering why they aren't taking from art that might be more representative at time. It seems like a modern model to me.
Yes. No, I agree. I think that's interesting as well. And there are other things online. This actually caught my eye. I think maybe for that reason, because it was kind of taking like these modern elements and kind of applying it to it. So then we get into the Italian Renaissance, which I think was very different. And it's much more about being much more full. Again, still kind of the fair skin was big back then, which is interesting to me. Devinne, any thoughts on this one?
It's so funny because, one, I'm Italian. So like when I see this and I'm seeing like the descriptions of it, like I'm thinking of like my grandma, and I know obviously completely different time, but like I'm just thinking through like it's true. Like she kind of I don't know, like the way her image looks right there, it just looks like she's kind of kept to herself, but trying to like show off her beauty from like afar, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like a hidden, I don't know, I feel like it's hidden a little bit.
Yeah, and I think again about the Renaissance, so much about art. And they were saying, in this one, during the Italian Renaissance, it was the wife's duty to reflect her husband's status, both in behavior and outward appearance. If you had more money, maybe you were eating better, maybe you were expected to dress a certain way, show off certain assets at a time when there was a lot going on. Then we get into Victorian England, again, kind of a similar feel, I feel, with the Renaissance a little bit here. And as we get more into time, we look at the Roaring 20s. This was much more interesting, flat-chested, less of a waist, short bob, a little bit more masculine in this space. And then, of course, we get into Hollywood and we start thinking about Marilyn Monroe. And we go back to the curves are now a thing and size is now a thing. And then we get into the 60s, and I would say even into the 90s, or no, excuse me, the 60s, where it's thin. Then we go back to the 80s, more voluptuous. And then again, back to thin in the 90s, to finally where we're at today, where it's much more, in some ways, focused on people like Kim Kardashian. That's a big one I feel like I hear from men and women a lot. Where it's like this kind of strange voluptuousness, but also like be super skinny, like this combo. So I just kind of thought that was an interesting thing to kind of start our discussion here. So I would just love, as you're seeing these kind of showcase these images and you look at the changes. Renata, I'll start with you. What is your thought overall when you think about women and body image from a cultural and kind of like media perception?
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating is how different people can set these standards of what women's bodies should be like, no matter where they are in the world. And for me, I always think about the media as one of the major proponents for body image, whether it be nowadays in terms of social media or what's portrayed on the internet, or even like back in the day, as I referred to it before, like what we put on vases or what we put on cave walls are a depiction of what we think a woman's body should look like. And I think that they're one and the same. However, we put a body type or a body image on a pedestal, whether it be on a clay pottery or on a cave wall or on the internet, it's all asking people to measure themselves up to that particular standard. And how realistic is that? Because if you look back at cave wall paintings, it was very 2D. They couldn't, get that voluptuousness really exaggerated on the cave wall. But I mean, I joke, but what I really mean is anytime we put something on the pedestal, we're expected to compare ourselves to it, at least in my opinion. And so that is really where the danger comes from, but also where the possibility is. Because when we start showcasing nowadays more different type of women, heights, sizes, voluptuousness, skinny, all the different shapes that a woman can be, that's when we start to make it totally okay and even amazing for us to be all different shapes and sizes and something to be celebrated.
Yeah, I agree. Patty, I'm curious with you and Lee because, for Renata, Devinne, and I, thinking about social media coming into really probably into play, not till college. So we didn't really experience it as kids, maybe college, maybe a little later. But for you guys, that was not prevalent. Do you feel like the media was as strong in the way that it is now, or is it different? Patty, I'll start with you.
Well, obviously the media, social media is just the way it has exploded. It has such more influence now than certainly when I was growing up. And that was many years ago. I think it was then, much smaller media. You had your, kind of influence from peers in terms of what was acceptable or not acceptable or desired or whatever. I think that played into it maybe as it probably still does today. But yeah, obviously, I think social media now just controls a lot and really sends messages. And so what I'm seeing now, though, is those messages that so much more is acceptable and all desirable and all attractive.
Well, it's interesting that you're seeing it in that light. I think we're going in that direction, but I definitely feel like you have the other side. And when you talk to like young girls, teenage girls, sometimes even younger, when they're going through puberty and they're comparing to their peers, or now there's all these apps where you can like make your face thinner and make your butt bigger and all these things, which is crazy. Sometimes even like when I look at like the filters and like you're not wearing makeup and it's dark, but like it adds eyelashes, you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. So there's all this like added piece to it that I think sometimes causes a lot of pressure or a lot of concern. Devin, do you have any thoughts on this?
When you're talking about this, I think of like when you're looking on like social media and you're scrolling through and you see somebody with like the perfect life, like quote unquote, and you think like, oh, they have it all together. Everything for them is just so easy. They're beautiful. They have a great relationship, like all of that. And you don't see anything behind it. I think when I think of like body image, I think of like what Renata was talking about is that you see this image and you want to be that image. Like you see, and then people always talk about like if you're on social media for too long, sometimes like it could actually hurt your mind in different ways because then you start to compare yourself to other people. And so when I think of the media, I think of the same thing. Like you can look at this person and say like, I don't have that body. And then honestly be like upset about it, depressed about it, and like try, compare yourself to it. And I do agree with Patty that it's going in that direction. I just don't know. And like I'm speaking just for myself, like I don't know if it's there yet. Like I still see images and I compare myself, and it's hard because it's like you want to be happy with your body, you want to be happy with your surroundings, and then you see all these other images and you can't help but compare yourself.
Yeah. And I think, I would say probably Instagram when it first started was the worst because maybe because I was in fitness at the time, but there were so many fitness people that not only showing their bodies, but like just almost naked. You're like, whoa, like it was like a lot to be looking at. And uncomfortable in some ways, but it was the way that people could get attention or get followers. And then you would start to see, I owned a business, and I would see someone saying they owned a business because they could get Instagram followers, but it was based on them showing off their body. And then it's kind of like, wait, that's not what I want to do, but is that what you have to do? Like, it's just, it would take kind of body image to a new direction. I think when I would kind of look at it from a social standpoint, especially when Instagram first started. Lee, any thoughts here for you? Because again, this social media era kind of started, early 2000s or so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, definitely growing up, it was different for us because, there was just some magazines and commercials. And back then it was pretty much, the same, skinny, Kate Moss or maybe even like Cheryl Tiegs, but it was, white American skinny and Barbie, so, coming from a different culture, it was kind of hard. Like now I kind of think about it. I'm like, well, maybe that's why I didn't play with Barbies that much, because it was a blonde Barbie, so I think at least these days girls have more opportunity to get, dolls in different colors and stuff. And even for my daughters growing up, and they had American Girl dolls, and my daughter who was tan, she kind of related to the African American Addie, and I didn't stop it, because there was at least more variety. So I guess, what's hard is you have social media, and there's some of the benefits of it that they are able to seek out people that are more like them. But for people who aren't open to doing that or aren't looking to do that, and they're subject to what they're being bombarded with, then I think it's really hard. You have to be able to get out of that and say, you know what? These people are doing it for different reasons than what maybe I'm seeking to look at, the social media for, so I think it's like a double-edged sword. There's more variety, and you're seeing more messages about women of different sizes and shapes and everything. But then you're also seeing more girls who are just doing selfies and, photoshopping themselves and, all that kind of stuff. So it's like both ends now. I think it's harder in a way. That way.
Yeah, I agree on both accounts. Kathleen says, yes, same with yoga instructors before, talking about kind of the level of lots of skin being shown on Instagram and kind of pushing it. I think, Lee, you bring up an interesting point from a kind of cultural perspective. And Kathleen said too, she grew up with Kira and Teresa, the Asian and Latina Barbies. Yeah, and I'd like to talk about that. I don't know, Lee and Renata, or if any of you want to discuss further kind of the cultural piece, because that's something like when I first think about body image, I was like, oh, wait, but you forget about skin tone. You forget about, like you said, if you're a young kid and you want to play with Barbies, but it's only white and blonde, and you're like, well, I have darker skin and darker hair. What does that mean? I mean, Renata, have you ever experienced that, or any thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, all the time. And what I am happy to see is that it is improving, just as everyone has said today. But also, for me, I'm Indonesian. So how many Indonesian dolls do you see out there? Or how many Indonesian actresses or actors do you see out there that are making waves in the industry? There's still more work to do. And I 100% agree. It starts with what toys do I have access to, so that they can see that all things are possible, no matter where they come from or what they look like. So that is 100% important to me.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, like Patty mentioned early on, it's nice to see we're going in that shift. You're seeing models being used of different sizes, different backgrounds, different disabilities, which I think it's so important to kind of have that representation. The other piece, it's not just kind of the culture and the media, it's peers. And how peers talk to each other, whether they are friends or people you hear, in the locker room or whatever, kind of growing up. For me, I don't really remember. I feel like when I was young, really talking about it, but I do feel like it's something maybe in college. I was a dance major in college, and that was constant of, are we thin enough? And to watch so many. I think my roommate and I were the only people, this was I was there 2004, 2008, the only people who didn't smoke and drink coffee. And you would go into the dance studio and you would see 50 there was only 60 of us, 50 dance majors sitting outside smoking and drinking coffee. And I was like, oh my God, now they're going to dance. But they did it to stay thin. And I was just not into that. But there was that pressure. So I think for me, that was really the first time where it was like, wait, is this healthy? Like, this seems absurd, like that people are going, and I had, a good friend, many friends that went through anorexia. I'm grateful I did not, but I definitely was kind of around that, and it was challenging. Devinne, have you ever experienced that, or ever, with peers growing up, conversations or things you heard and saw?
Yeah, I remember as you were talking, I was thinking through, like, I remember in middle school when we had gym class and we would be in the locker room and everyone would kind of have their corner to change in. And I even remember then, like, some of the girls just being like so uncomfortable with the situation because of body image. And I do remember one of my friends growing up was bulimic and another one was anorexic. And it's just interesting now, like looking back at it, because I can see through it now and understand it more and understand all the issues that they were struggling with. And I mean, it's sad to think of, because at that time, like, I don't know. I remember just thinking like of myself. And I know that sounds really selfish, but like myself and my body and I was thinking of like my own issues that I had. And so, yeah, I think it just impacted a lot of different things. Yeah, and growing up still, like one of my good friends was anorexic for so many years. And now she's in great health, but she has a lot of repercussions from it all. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to talk about this and to understand that there were so many different things that had happened behind the scenes. Again, as I said before, like, what you don't know, you see like a perfect life, but all these things that people are going through behind the scenes too, and trying to match up to.
Yeah, no, I agree. Rajika said, I think body image is still prevalent even in adults. Yes, I would agree. I think I'm in my mid 30s and I definitely feel like internally I feel 19. But then you're like, sometimes you're like, as you get older, it is harder to lose weight. You can't eat the things you did when you were 18. Your metabolism is super fast. Like, your body just changes. And then of course, when my mom went through menopause, and you have that phase and trying to deal with that. And like, that's challenging. I think that's something I feel probably, you know, women kind of deal with more than men. Patty or Lee, did you like, do you think about body image now, or did you as you were kind of growing up, or now are you like, I don't care?
You want to go, Patty? Or?
You go first, Lee, this time.
Oh yeah, definitely had issues all through growing up and even adulthood. And you know, I'd have to say, you know, when I was younger, I didn't understand as much about the relationship between food and exercise and drinking, and you know what that does to your body. And you know, I was a lot heavier when I was younger, and I think for me, after I had kids, I just remember this one photo of me after I had my second daughter, and I'm looking, and I had a Christmas sweater on. I had these horrible glasses on. I was like overweight. I looked like a frumpy old lady, and I just it kind of like shocked me into going, I'm not that old, but if I don't do something, I'm gonna just get worse, you know. So it was my own kind of wake up call. But I think, you know, it's always a kind of a I don't want to say a struggle, but it's something that you always have to work on. I think everybody has, even those models that, you know, are perfect, probably have their own inner insecurities. You know, my butt's not big enough, or, you know, whatever, my legs aren't long enough. We all have our own insecurities. And even now, you know, Patty and I both dance, right? We talk about, you know, having to wear these dresses, and half of them are exposing like way more than I want to expose at this age, you know, and maybe other people don't see it, but I know where my wobbly bits are that I don't want showing, you know. They're always going to be there, and, you know, they're real to me, but maybe not real to other people, you know, so we all have to deal with that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I just want to couple on that before Patty goes, because the other thing, I have a good friend who is a trans female. And again, we're talking about cis women, but you also think about, okay, men and LGBTQ and trans. And one of the things she told me was that it's very common for trans women, first of all, to have body image issues in general, but she was telling me about that they really want to have bigger butts. And I mean, this whole conversation about it. And I was like, interesting, you know what I mean? Because that's what seems to be more feminine. And, you know, thinking about, wow, that's a whole nother level of having to deal with body image as you're kind of transitioning and adjusting. So it's just that comment you made reminded me of that. Patty, so what are your thoughts? Is this something that, you know, you found that you've struggled with in the past that you've kind of dealt with now, or how do you feel about it?
Well, picking up on some of the other comments, I think middle school can be hell. I mean, it's just
the worst.
The worst, that middle school. And so I think I don't know, pretty much everybody probably has a story. So picking up on the locker room, I remember hearing the term, gosh, she's so flat chested, you know, and it's just then something that stays with you, whether or not that's on your list of maybe at some point in time, that was a good thing. But, you know, in the circle I was in, it wasn't. But, you know, so so then you do go with the commercials, and then, you know, do you try this and you try that, and what is it and why is it? And then, you know, then you just, well, that's just what your body is and who you are. And I guess I've been, I don't know if you want to say fortunate from the standpoint of, I think, metabolism wise, but so I've never really had like a big weight issue. I mean, you know, there was always those college 10 pounds, but that I think everybody gets. But
yes, 50, we call them freshmen 15, but
or 20.
Yeah.
But now that I'm getting closer to 70, it's like, okay, so you do have a whole different kind of, as Lee, you're nowhere near there, but, you know, kind of the body image again, but in a different way of, what things you want to highlight, what things you don't want to highlight. But, you know, and do you do things, you know, do you do, and so I'd like to open that part of it. Do you do like the Botox? I know people in their 30s that routinely now are, you know, have done Botox and have done things to make them feel better, and they look, you know, great. But, you know, I'm not in probably a place where I would be looking to do any of those cosmetic changes to uncomfortable. So I'm going to be where I am. But
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't need it. And I think you're right. There's definitely people that do it. And, sometimes you see celebrities and sometimes you're like, whoa, like maybe it's time to stop. But, again, it is kind of like what each person feels comfortable with. Somebody was telling me, I don't know if this is true, but it sounds like it could be, that in the last year, because everybody's been on Zoom for work, and you see I have a camera, I have stuff set up a little bit differently, but even when I'm work calls, it's the same. I don't have the mic, but some people's, camera is like right up in their face. It's like, it's so awkward. They haven't figured out how to push it back, but they become self-conscious about it. So now they've gotten plastic surgery because they're like, oh my God, now I'm in these Zoom calls and it's so close to my face that there's this like, such an issue. But yeah, it's something of interest. Yeah. Someone just asked, can I ask a question? Yeah. If you have a question, you're more than welcome to share it here. Renata, any thoughts? You're a mom. Patty and Lee have had children. Devin and I have not, but one of my thoughts is always like, oh my God, like when you have kids, like your body goes through so much physically, like that concept kind of freaks me out. And then you see some women that literally look like they've never had a baby. They're like this, and they're taking these gorgeous pictures. And you have some that, do struggle to get back to their healthy weight. Renata, did you go through any of that or any feelings based on that?
Oh yeah, 100% went through that. So with my first child, I think what's really interesting is one, you're never ever really prepared to have a kid anyway, right? But then two, I do believe that there are some societal expectations about what your body should look like during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy. So people expect you when you're pregnant, like to only ever look like this glowing vision of like motherhood, like the belly and like it's so perfectly round and like you're just so joyful. They don't tell you that like your ankles are going to swell up so much that you won't be able to tell where they start and where they end. You're going to, like at the beginning, it's just going to look like you're really bloated all the time until you get the belly. And then like when you're really close to delivering, you're going to be so swollen all over the place that it's going to be very uncomfortable for you. And everyone's going to be like this happened to me. Everyone is going to be like, oh, are you carrying twins? At the time I was not. Or two, like, whoa, you're ready to pop, aren't you? But like people always feel like they need to, and like this is a very human thing, but people always feel like they need to tell you what they think about your body. And it takes, I think, a certain degree of self-awareness to realize that that's coming from a totally separate place that's really not attributed to you at all. But then even after you've delivered, I had this very unreasonable expectation that immediately I would deliver my baby and I'd pop back to my pre-baby weight and physique. Guess what? I was wrong. But I didn't understand, and I couldn't understand my body in a logical sense. Like my boobs were huge. And by the way, like I barely fill like an A cup. So my boobs are gigantic, just filled with breast milk that my baby's having issues latching. So of course they're just like leaking milk everywhere. My belly has expanded to hold a child. And then now it's like all sagging and everywhere. I'm exhausted. I can't figure out what to eat because I'm starving all the time. And I'm trying to do all the things that I did before, which is basically impossible when you have a newborn. And so I saw a picture of myself with my sisters and my mom after my first child was born. And I was wearing this like gray nursing shirt, like, the ones that have like the little flaps. So it's like really easy for you to like feed the baby when she's hungry or he's hungry. So I'm wearing one of those and I'm kind of like leaning into the picture so that, it can be a good picture of all of us girls. And I saw that picture later and I thought to myself, I look like an elephant. I mean, I was wearing this gray shirt, like I had all the rolls, my boobs are gigantic, like no makeup, hair is crazy. And I had that instant judgment of myself based upon the fact that I was judging me against what society on TV, on movies, on everything says that you should look like after you deliver a baby, which is impossible, by the way. And then I even think to the extent now we celebrate women's bodies after they've had kids and they look like they've never had a kid. What's wrong with looking like you had a kid? There's nothing wrong with that. Like your body did go through some incredible changes to literally grow another human being. And there is nothing wrong with that. So I have a lot of thoughts about society and their expectations of what women's bodies should look like, especially through pregnancy and beyond. And sometimes I have to just shake my head and laugh because honestly, it's crazy.
I thank you for sharing your honesty on that. I've seen on TikTok where I think, what is great about social media is you do have some people that are just honest. And there's a few women that are like, this is what I look like. And then, someone puts like a hateful comment. And then I love on TikTok when they call them out. They're like, look, jerk. Like, this is what happened. This is a real body. You know what I mean? And I love the confidence and just the, even if in that moment, even if later she cries or gets upset, the fact that she says, look, this is normal. Like you just said, I think that is so important because there is not only a judgment you get from other people, but from yourself. Like I said, I've never had kids or been pregnant, but I remember I worked in the fitness industry for a long time. And I think that also has had, certain consequences because there's an expectation, again, of how you're supposed to look. And I remember like after I was married once before, and I think I was married maybe a year, and I obviously had gained a little weight. And all these older people were like coming up to me and were like, oh, we know. I was like, you know what? They were like, you're pregnant. And I was like, no, just a little fat. I was like, thank you. Like 6 people. It was so uncomfortable. And I just remember being like, who does that? You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, maybe there are 75, 80. It's still wrong. Meanwhile, these people are very overweight. So part of me is kind of like, I'm not saying anything nasty to you. And it's just like a weird thing. And it would make me so uncomfortable and so self-conscious. And then I would like talk to my mom and she's like, you look fine. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, but for someone to say that, to touch your stomach and you're not, like, that's disgusting and rude and uncomfortable on so many levels. And so that was just my personal story that I had to share based on what you said. Lee, she talked about kind of her pregnancy. You had kids a while ago. Did you kind of go through anything similar, like what she spoke about?
Oh yeah, definitely. And people always want to like touch your belly. It's like, just know you should ask somebody if it's okay. Just don't automatically touch somebody's belly, for the reason, right? They might not be pregnant. And even if they are, it's like, it's just like personal. But yeah, I mean, I think you always do compare, I compared to my sister-in-law she just had wonderful pregnancies. I was so happy for her, but she was the glowing pregnant mom. And I'm not just morning sick. I'm all day sick, all night sick till like 7 months pregnant. I had, all sorts of other, issues. So I didn't love being pregnant, but you are supposed to be glowing, So there are a lot of expectations. And also after you have the kid. Yeah, it's just like, let yourself go through it and be a mess, 'cause
it's okay.
It's okay, wear your sweats all the time and, just, you gotta survive, it's a wonderful time. Don't worry about what you look like. Enjoy your time with your baby.
Yes. Again, Kathleen says it's disturbing when celebrities are praised for their post-baby bodies. Yes. Like, I don't understand, like, when you see that. Devin, again, we haven't been through that, but have you had anyone ever say weird comments or seen any of this stuff we're talking about?
Oh my God, 100%, 100%. I haven't had kids, but I can think of, a bunch of my friends are now having kids, and like I see like the way people like react to them now, and like pre and post, and I'm like, this is like so crazy. Like, you are actually like, you're bringing a life into this world, and people are talking to you in like a way that it's just like uncomfortable. And like, I feel like, again, haven't been through it, but I feel like your body is going through so much emotionally. You're probably like going through so much. You're dealing with like your own struggles. You're dealing with carrying a child, and then you have to then deal with people's comments like on top of it. And I don't know who mentioned this before, but like, it's definitely somebody else's like struggle that they're like kind of putting on somebody else. But at the same time, like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, we're also like sensitive over our body images because of so many different reasons. It just like adds like fuel to the fire, and you can't help but like, I don't know, feel sorry. Like, it's just, in any which way too. Like, I've gained weight. I mean, my freshman year, I gained so much weight. I think it was like even more than 15 pounds. And I I just remember coming home and just feeling like gross. Like then the people that knew me beforehand, I was always like an athlete. Like I always was like, I was a gymnast. I was an athlete, if you want to call it that, but I was always playing some sport, running, doing whatever. And so I never really thought about like what I ate. Like I lived at home. I thought, and then I went away to college. I tried like the vegan thing, which for me at my freshman year of college meant eat fake chicken nuggets and french fries every day and pizza. And like that, I mean, that wasn't like vegan at all. And I remember going to the hospital and the doctor literally was like, eat a steak, like go eat something because you're destroying your body. But like at that point, I gained so much weight. And I remember coming home and being like, oh my God, I'm not the same person that when I left for college. And yeah, it's uncomfortable because you yourself deal with like emotionally feeling uncomfortable, and then you have other people kind of relay it on to you too.
Yeah, I just find it so odd sometimes when people say stuff and you're like, did that just happen? Like you just have to take a moment and be like, was that just said? Like that's an inside voice thought. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we don't need to be sharing stuff. And like we're, talking as 5 healthy women. I mean, you think about, again, someone who's had a disability, someone who again, this is what is beautiful about social media. You realize how many people are living with illnesses, diseases, things of that nature that you're like, oh my God, I never even thought of that, where there's a huge birthmark or there's a skin issue or all those things. And you think about the amount of crap that they have to go through and how confident they are. And then sometimes it puts in perspective, like, wait, why am I getting upset? Like I'm a healthy individual. I don't have any of these issues. So it's an interesting thing. And then we do have someone here, Joe, kind of asking as a guy, because we are talking a little bit more as females. As a guy, he says, I have a bit of body dysmorphia, was a bit plump as a kid, then became skinny because of lockdown, anxiety has amplified. I think, that's definitely true. I think a lot of people either have gained weight, lost weight. There's been kind of these extremes during lockdown. People who were super active weren't, people who weren't active are, and there's been kind of pluses and minuses to that. And then, talking about stress eating, then you put on weight, kind of this back and forth. And he said, I want to be in terms of my goal, but looking at my current body fat, don't like looking at myself in the mirror, have this pressure to look fit and amazing by the time my college starts. I think, yes, I think it's good, Joe. I appreciate you, sharing this. His story was pretty long, so I didn't want to post it up here. But I think you're right. It's not just women that go through this. Men go through this as well. Obviously, we can't speak to that as women, how it feels as men. I think if there's an element where you feel, depressed or you're dealing with a mental health issue or you're feeling suicidal or anything of that extreme nature, I always talk about reaching out to a therapist. None of us are that on this show, so that's really important. But I think, again, it's like, I guess for men, maybe it's like, similar to what you were saying, Devin, like sometimes it's like their pressure to be a particular athlete and to be in a certain shape and to make the team and to look a certain way. And, they're looking at Instagram too, and women are seeing guys with abs and, again, on TikTok, like you see some of these things, you're like, this is like, is this person's like 16 and like, you're uncomfortable to watch it. Like some of these like, and that's what you're seeing and comparing and thinking like, oh, that's what everybody should be, or that's what they should look like. And that's how they should act. And I think, just transitioning for all of us as a whole, as we kind of, listen to him and answer his question is, how do we each kind of deal with this? I think what we're learning right now is all of us at some point or another do and will continue to have some sort of body image issue. There's always going to be a point, whether it's you go through something mentally, physically, emotionally, there's a comparison, someone makes a comment, you have a baby, you go through menopause, like you gain weight after being an athlete, like there's always things that are going to happen and you're going to have that. But it is learning how to kind of have this more body positive image. So I'll start with you, Renata, because I know you were excited kind of about this topic. When you think of body positivity, what does that mean to you? How do you define it for men and women? How would you say, or maybe some tips to kind of mentally feel okay with how you look?
Yeah, I love this question. So for me, body positivity means being able to look at my body and literally find the positives about it. I think a lot of the time we look at ourselves in the mirror and we wonder, like, where did this weight come from? Or why do I have acne? Or, why can't I get rid of this scar? Or all these things. And we talk about ourselves negatively to ourselves, let alone to other people. I honestly feel like in some groups, it's almost acceptable to be self-deprecating about your body image as well. But what I love to do for myself, or, when I'm trying to guide other people that might be struggling with this too, is how can you wake up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror and find just one thing that you love about your body? Like maybe you love your eyes, maybe you love the tone of your skin, maybe you love how messy your hair looks when you get out of bed in the morning. How can you find that one thing? And when you look in the mirror, you say, yeah, I love that one thing about me. And that is like such an amazing way to start your day, because it starts this positive loop now, this positive self-talk. And as we do that, it gets us into the routine of continuing to talk about ourselves to ourselves in that positive light. And that is how we continue to build this feeling and this confidence in ourselves, and specifically within our physique.
So Renata, what is one of your favorite things about your body and your look?
Yeah, so I actually do love my eyes. I think that they are nice and big, like scary big at times. No, I'm kidding. But I do love my eyes. I think that my eyes are very expressive. So you can always tell what it is I'm thinking and feeling based upon my eyes.
I like that. Mine, which people always say is like interesting, is my shoulders. I think I love halter tops. I love I always wear like 80s shirts when I'm working out. People are like, do you like the 80s? I'm like, no, I just like how my shoulders look in this shirt. That's for me, it feels sexy. It feels strong. It feels good. There's something very like, beautiful and sensual about the neck, of woman's neck, I think in general. So for me, like that's my thing. So I always feel like when I go shopping or I look for things, I try to find things to accentuate that, and maybe not accentuate the areas that I don't love as much. But that's definitely one for me. So I like that. Devinne, what is something that you do, and what's your favorite part? I like this now that we're all learning.
I like this. Well, to answer the first part of the question, anytime like and I'm very open about mental health, but anytime like I have dips of depression, of anxiety, I kind of go through all these different, phases in life. And anytime that I've ever kind of dipped, something I've always done to kind of bring myself up is self-affirmations. And it's literally looking in the mirror and saying like good things about yourself, good things about like my body image or myself or my mind or my mindset or anything that I'm doing constantly, just because what you feed yourself is going to be everything. And so that's something like I literally will like sit there and stare in a mirror and talk to myself and try to like be like, okay, we're going to start the day off positive today. Let's do it. So I'm all for that. What do I like the most about myself? I don't know. I would say, so this is like really weird, but like I would go with like my like here up. Like I always like look like, I don't know, like when I'm like doing self-affirmations, like I always like am looking straight like into my eyes. Like I also really like my eyes, my eyebrows, weird, but like I love like my eyebrows. I'm very particular on them. And my hair, like I've changed my hair so often, but I just feel like it's natural and it's me and it's like who I am. And no matter what I change about my hair, it's still going to be me. So
I love that. I love that.
Well, thank you. So yeah, that's what I do and who I am.
I like that. And isn't it interesting, before I get to Patty and leave, I don't know if you've ever done this before with other people, whether it's friends or someone you're dating, and you ask this question. And every time, no one ever says the same thing. And in fact, the area that maybe I don't like is generally what people are like, oh, that's what I think is the best about you. And you're like, really? Interesting. Why am I getting so worked up about it when these people say, actually, I think that's great. Like for me, I'm short. So like, I've always felt like, oh, I have bigger legs, but I've had so many people like, no, your legs look strong. And so it starts to kind of change the thought of like, wait, I am strong. You know what I mean? And versus like feeling like it has to be skinny or like these images. And so it's kind of it's interesting when you have these conversations with other people, what they say. Sometimes it's not the things you think. and they enhance something that maybe you didn't feel as strongly about before. So if you haven't done that conversation, I would encourage that, because I think it's a very interesting one to have. Lee, what is your favorite part about yourself, and what do you do for body positivity?
I guess my legs. I got them from my dad, so I'm not going to take any credit for them. And no matter, whether I've been heavier or skinnier, my legs seem to stay the same. So I kind of like that. Yeah. And I'd have to say, another thing, like you say, self-affirmation, but also, surround yourself with people who support you and that don't try and tear you down. I found that, the friends that I have, we really support, and it's not being, we don't fakey support, I just feel it's very sincere. And, and I will tell my friends if there's something in a kind way that maybe isn't right for them or doesn't look right on them, but we'll definitely do that in a positive way, and I think that's really, really important. People who like compare themselves to friends who are always, doing whatever selfies and, are more superficial, I think then you're going to have problems, trying to compare yourself. So I don't know. That's just something I feel like I've learned over the years, is kind of shed those people that, aren't your people.
I mean, that's in everything. And I was going to say too, I think on that note as well, it's interesting for me, dancers, Lee and Patty, you dance as well. And one of the things I always talk about beauty and sexiness and appeal, whether it's male or female, just a person, is actually their energy. And it's always fascinating to me when I watch people dance, like they're not doing choreography. They're like in the moment. It's social dance. It's improv. And my eye always goes to the person who's having the most fun, who's being themselves. And it doesn't matter their weight, their height, what they look like, their age, doesn't matter anything. And some of the most beautiful, attractive people I see are those people just in their moment. And I think and I see it in myself too. Like, I'm sure you probably notice in pictures, right? Like when you do like a fake smile versus like someone took a picture of you in the moment, and that feeling. So it's like, it's that too. It's like when I'm dancing, I feel wonderful and beautiful, versus when we're sitting in the mirror and kind of maybe picking ourselves apart. It's like when you're in that moment, it's that energy, it's that aura. And I think, having that for yourself and noticing that that's a part of it as well. And like you said, Lee, having people that support you and encourage you and point that out. I don't think most people do that. Like if I see someone wearing something nice, I'm like, oh, I love your outfit. And they're always like, oh, like, we don't say it enough, to kind of share that to people, just to be kind in a genuine way. Patty, what is your favorite part? And we've got eyes, eyebrows, hairs, shoulders, legs. Do you have something in the middle, or where's yours going to go?
I don't know. So much of it seems to be changing over these last few years.
It always changes. It's okay.
I'm actually then going to go with my ears.
Oh, I like that.
I'm always, I'm not shaming, but
Yeah.
always, comfortable when I have hair behind my ears and earrings, and so.
I love that. I love that I love these answers. So how do you keep a kind of body positive image and mindset, Patty?
Well, it's because agree with all that has been said, but just to maybe add another piece or angle is taking a little bit what you were talking about, Carrie, and even talking about pregnancy. I think sometimes fashion and what we wear has a great impact. So again, when I was pregnant 38 years ago, the style was tents. They were really like these tent dresses. So you didn't have what I think
Moo-moos.
For some women,
awful.
This style of show the whole body. And I gained 45 pounds with my pregnancy because I thought I can eat because nobody can see.
Under the tent.
And it was fine because that's what we wore. Had to deal with it afterwards. But during the pregnancy, everybody had tents. That was it.
That's right.
But I think then after, like Carrie, you said, you find, to accent what makes you feel good, a style. So I think if people can find their style and something that makes them feel good. So kind of like Lee said, well, for some of us, it may be not a style that shows off some of the arms or the back anymore, but a style that highlights some other part that makes you feel good, because then if you feel good, no matter what your body looks like, if you're feeling good about it and you're highlighting things through your fashion, through your style, your own style, I think that comes across.
Yeah, I like that note. I would not say I'm a fashion person in the sense that like some people like to shop and they like to have different clothes, and that's not really my area because I can find it frustrating. Because I would love to be like, here's the store for you, all stuff that shows your shoulders and makes you look taller. Like that would be amazing. But you got to try it on, doesn't fit. Like I shop by looking at the mannequins. I'm like, okay, do you have that? Like that's how I shop. But I think you're right. It makes a difference in how you feel and how you present yourself. It's a big thing. And I think, one of the things that I've noticed as I've gotten older, like, yes, we always want to like look good, but I was doing this workout over quarantine and the whole time that, it's a TV YouTube workout and the guy's like, come on, dig deep. What are you here for? What are you here for? And I'm like yelling at the TV. I'm like, lower my cholesterol, feel better, no more pain. And it's just funny how it changes where maybe like when I was 20, it was like lose weight, bigger butt. Now I'm like, I just want to like get up in the morning and not have pain in my left side of my body. You know what I mean? It's just funny. Like, I want to just feel good. I want to just be able to sleep at night. The differences that change overall is part of it. But I definitely think for me, body positivity is not only what we all talked about, but it's also doing things for me that are active that I enjoy. So when I'm dancing and I'm weight training, I don't do it to, like I just said, to necessarily lose weight. That's like an extra bonus if that happens, but it's more to feel strong, to feel good. The endorphins that are going, I'm not thinking about my body. I'm just moving it and it feels good. So it to me, that's kind of part of the body positivity that I do. I want to bring Kathleen one more time. Kathleen, I love that you are participating here. She said when she was in high school, you went to an all-girls school. We had this mirror meditation and health class where we were supposed to stare at ourselves naked and tell ourselves how much we loved our bodies. Was that by yourself or with other people? Because that's like a whole nother level of intensity right there. But yeah, I think that's, again, it sounds crazy, but like we have to love ourselves first. And I think, Devinne, to your point, what we say is what we think is what we feel. Kathleen says that was at home by ourselves. Thank you for clarifying. Good to know. So yeah, it's important because we have to, we hear that inner voice in our head and it has to be a positive one. So I definitely agree on that account. So Renata also is somebody who I'm calling her a chef. I don't know if that's the word we want to use, but she makes some of these like amazing healthy dishes that taste good but are good for you. And Renata, I'd love for you to just briefly kind of talk about the importance of food here in body positivity and body image in a way that isn't stressful, but just healthy, So if you can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this is honestly my favorite subject. So I think the first thing to note is that we attach so much emotion to food. Like we either deprive ourselves or we punish ourselves with food or lack thereof, or we tie like most emotions of like joy and celebration and happiness and sharing with food, right? And this is completely normal. But the other thing that we do is, especially for women in society, based upon what I've seen, is we keep wanting to be on this diet roller coaster. And we inevitably fall off the wagon because it is really restrictive, or like we cut out major food groups and it's just not sustainable. When we let what happens, we attach shame and guilt and frustration, overwhelm back to food. And we keep going through this cycle on and on and on and on. And for me, what I've now realized is that the diet industry is created to make you feel like you've done something wrong if you're not sticking to a diet 150%. And when you realize that it's a cookie cutter plan that is basically impossible for anyone to stick to, you realize that if no one can stick to it, it's actually not the people, it's not me, there's not something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the plan. The plan is just not built to take in a variety of different bodies in all the different shapes and sizes and metabolisms and whatnot. So it's really important for me first to share that if you've ever fallen off the wagon in terms of a diet, please know that you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. And so for me, the key is then tuning inwards instead of looking outwards all the time, trying to figure out, well, what's this celebrity doing or what are they saying on Pinterest that I should eat? Instead of going outward, tune into what your own body needs. So when we do that, when we listen to our own body's cues, we actually then get a better understanding of what our own bodies need. And when we do that, we can then create meals that fill us up, not just in the physical sense, like we won't just feel satiated, but we'll feel really good about ourselves because we'll feel higher energy. We'll feel more vitality for life. We'll have more joy because we know that we're putting amazing things into our body that help us in every single aspect of health. So whenever I'm creating recipes, not only am I taking like ideas of traditional recipes that are almost like comfort foods, but I always try to infuse it with healthier options because one, you're getting that emotional aspect that you might tie to that traditional food, like that joy and comfort and camaraderie and sharing. But also you're getting the positive benefits of having a much more nutrient dense meal. And so that's really important for me to not, one, for people to not think that healthy food has to be really boring and bland, but two, to know that you can have healthier options of some of the foods that you already love. And not only are you going to get the emotional aspect of like, this makes me feel good because I tie it to a memory of my family or friends, but also that I'm fueling my body, I'm nourishing my body with really good stuff so that I can keep finding that confidence within myself to keep eating a way that really serves my particular body in what I need right now.
Yes, I know that's something that I continue to work on as well. I think you're right. It's so many times we hear from media, from TV, from ads, do this, do that, do this, keto, no, do vegan, no, do that. And you're like, what? And you try and you're like, which one? Which one's right? I don't know. But it's going back to, like you said, what feels right for you and kind of testing some different options that it doesn't have to be boring. You know, you can still have things that you like because, yeah, we still want to have an element of health, you know, but that, you know, you can be body positive in general, but being able to just move every day and eat foods that are nourishing, but that you enjoy and like are really important. So I appreciate that. Just to finish up here, any final thoughts on body image or body positivity, a tip you want to leave, a thought you've had after this conversation? Devin, I'll start with you.
I would actually say, so I wrote something down and it kind of goes exactly to what Renata said. So I too, especially during COVID, have tried to like start cooking. And so by cooking, I'm not like a chef. I'm not developing recipes. I'm like following recipes. And everyone actually calls me the sloth by cooking because it takes me forever, but I just like to enjoy the process. But I wrote down eat healthy, feel healthy, like take care of yourself and feel good. And so I think through like I've kind of like fluctuated on weight. I've fluctuated on like my moods and everything. And my fiance is really good at this too because he'll like he can see like the outside of me, obviously. And so he's always like, when you go to the gym and you eat healthy, like that's when you feel the best and that's when your mindset's like the strongest. And so I guess like my biggest thing, like for me and for my body, like I know that I need to work out. I know that I need to fuel my mind by being out in nature, going on hikes, going for walks, going like those things, like it fuels my mind, it makes me feel healthy. And then eating healthy, I mean, I don't know, I just feel better. Like I feel like I wake up in the morning, I don't feel bloated, I don't feel like gross. And I don't mean gross as in like, oh, like blaming myself for eating something bad the night before, but like I feel healthy. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I would say, I guess, to leave everyone, like love yourself and do what like makes like feels right for you. And, you know, whatever makes you feel good and feel healthy, keep doing.
Yes, I agree. I like that you mentioned too, again, walks outside. Health is more than just exercise and eating. It's the mental health. It's the emotional health. All of that can be a huge play in how we look and feel as well. So I appreciate that. Patty, any last thoughts based on what we're talking about today?
I wouldn't say any last thoughts or words of wisdom as much as I think more a question that we don't have time for. But I raised two sons, and so not a whole lot of issues. But now I have three granddaughters, and so thoughts, ideas, because that's a little bit, certainly on my mind and my heart is a focus on now helping them. And I'm hoping, because the oldest is 5, that the social media is moving in the right direction. It'll make it a little easier for them than some have had in the past. But tips, ideas, and thoughts on best ways to help children grow up with good body image is appreciated.
Well, Lee, you had 2 girls. They're older now, so I'll let you start to answer that question.
Yeah, I think, kind of to what Renata says about the diets, which really to me, and I've tried some in the past, they really tend to set people up to fail. I feel you need to change your lifestyle. And something that I've tried to, I guess, raising 2 daughters is we eat healthy. Our house wasn't one with just chicken nuggets and pizza all the time. We didn't put butter on broccoli, and they always had multiple choices of vegetables, but they were going to eat vegetables, fruits, healthy food. And the other thing was exercise, and I have to say my daughters are very different. My older one's very active, my younger one maybe not so much, but she knows that every day she needs to get outside if possible, if not indoors, but get some exercise, because that's what's going to make you feel better, and it's part of your lifestyle, and that's just what I think parents need to do just from the very beginning, is eat healthy, be healthy, and healthy mind, healthy body.
Yeah, Renata, I'd love for you to kind of finish this off, because I think one of the challenges, not only for people, but certainly for parents with kids, as you kind of mentioned, you have three children, I believe, right? That it gets crazy. I remember I'm the oldest of 3. I remember half the time, like it was like make do night, or my mom was like, I can't, like everyone's got a schedule. I don't have time. Like this is insane. And there's the stress of that. And it's easy to do pizza, but you actually have a lot of different things where you're like, hey, actually easy to do some other things that taste like pizza. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to kind of answer your question, Patty, or for anyone else that has children and they want to instill like a really positive food relationship, is that we have to be the example. So we as adults need to live in the example that we want to set. And sometimes that's difficult to do, and it's going to be challenging on some days. But if 80% of the time we're showing our kids that we can make positive choices and we're feeding them wholesome, whole foods, that's a win in my book. But also, I'm completely reasonable. Like, it's not like my kids never have pizza or anything like that, but they know and have known from a young age that primarily we cook at home. Like, they get involved in the process. They know where the food comes from. It's not all processed foods. They do have access to it because I'm not unreasonable, as I mentioned. And I don't want them to ever feel like some things were so off limits as they were growing up, that when they do get out of the house and they kind of go haywire and only eat junk food, like until they realize that there's something wrong with only eating junk food. So really, I recommend just being that example. And you can use the store to help you. I mean, there's so many more amazing convenience items at our grocery stores nowadays. They have pre-washed and chopped veggies and fruits that you can get at a moment's notice. You can throw that into a pan and make a really quick stir fry. There's obviously, rotisserie chickens or like seafood that's readily available now, and they cook super quickly, as well as like doing a little bit of meal prep. And for me, meal prep doesn't mean like you go into the kitchen on a Sunday and you spend 4 hours cooking for the rest of the week. It can literally be, how can you make a couple of meals in 30 minutes that will last you and your family a couple of days, and then do the same thing so that you don't have to feel like you got to cook every single night, but it's still instilling these amazing food relationship habits with your family that you eat at home and you eat together around the table. And it's a time to not only nourish your body, but also your mind and your spirit.
I love that. And I think too, I mean, I will speak for myself, something that I've learned as well is like not judging yourself on what you do eat for dinner. Sometimes you feel like, oh, it has to look like this. It doesn't, there's nothing wrong with, I don't really like a lot of flavors on my palate. So if I want to have raw vegetables cut up, that's fine, and kind of letting go of that judgment and just finding things again, as we've been talking about, what works for you, what feels comfortable for you, making sure that you are doing things that make you feel good. And I agree with you, Devin. Sometimes when we eat foods that aren't great or we don't exercise, it's not a guilt thing. It's like we physically don't feel good afterwards. Your body's like revolting and you're like, maybe I shouldn't eat that. Like, and as we get older, it changes, your body can't tolerate certain foods. So you adjust and you find other things. So I appreciate you all being here and just sharing your honesty, your stories. I think, again, for those listening and watching, just a reminder, like, everybody goes through this, and to have a guy come on and talk about, his issue as well. This is something that everyone's going through, but we don't have to spend as much stress on it, just finding ways to just love ourselves and move in some capacity and find the right foods. That's really what matters. So Renata, can you give us the website, because you do have some wonderful recipes on there as well that people can try if they want to check it out?
Yes, thank you. So my website is nourishwithrenata.com, and there's a whole bunch of amazing healthy recipes on there, and I'd love to connect with you all.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for being here. I appreciate it. Again, if you want to listen to other episodes, you can check out Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things on the audio podcast or wherever you are watching this now. So thank you so much, ladies, for being here.
Thanks for having us.